I would love for you to share a little bit with our audience, a little bit about you. What got you into this in the first place, and what's been kind of your career journey?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on today. I have been looking so forward to this podcast. The work that you're doing is helping, I'm sure, millions across the globe. So thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. We do need healthier workplaces. And I would say that's really the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. You know, we all want to find our purpose and what really drives us. And I think as someone who, you know, I started off as a management trainee, worked my way all up into the C-suite, worked my way into the C-suite. And, you know, along that path, what I found was, you know, a great deal of success. You know, I'm what I would consider an outperformer. Everything that I did, I wanted to do it better than what was done before, or innovate to new things that are going to help the most amount of people, and create teams that did that. But along the way, what I also found was this parallel universe of individuals who didn't want to see that success happen for whatever reason. And of course, I thought I just attracted toxicity in the workplace. And what I found was, you know, I had a daughter who was getting prepared to go to college. And I thought to myself, you know, as a mother, I don't want her to have to go through the same things that I did. She was showing tendencies about performance as well. And it really came down to, I think the one thing I can do for her is sit down and write her a book and tell her everything that she needs to know about navigating workplaces, both healthy and non-healthy workplaces. And through that research and process, what I found was these aha moments that completely explained not only my experience, but millions of others across the globe. And as I began to tell other people about it, you know, they encouraged us to publish the book. And the rest is history. It's now been read in over 20 countries across the globe, and has hit has received a lot of accolades specifically for HR, top 100 books of all time for HR, for new leaders, and for executives.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, I think this is going to be a great conversation. So let's go back a little bit. You know, you mentioned kind of in your career that, you know, always kind of pride yourself on being an outperformer. And then at some point, you looked around and realized not everybody's excited for me. Yeah. Was that always true? Or did you notice there was a certain level you hit in your career where that became more commonplace?
You know, it was level-based. And I think once you make that transition into the true mid to senior level executive ranks, people compete with you and you don't even know it. And so I think that internal competition, that over competition is what I call it, actually is what creates the toxicity. And the individuals, based upon my research, the individuals who are actually perpetrating the toxicity, what I call imposter leaders, and imposters because they're not really leaders at all. They're very self-motivated and want to ingratiate themselves with their wealth or their power within the workplace, and they use the workplace to do that. The other individuals are left to become a shell of themselves. And so when we talk about the pandemic, this is why you're seeing, you know, mental claims up 40%, why you're seeing 40% of women leaders who now want to leave the workplace. It's not just the difficulty in our personal lives through the pandemic, but I think there was a lot of realization when you talk about the workplace therapist show, right? Workplace therapy. There's a lot of people who had a lot of difficulty, not just with the pandemic, but with managing the workplace and the toxicity through that entire process. And so the book actually was pre-pandemic and actually prophesized a lot of what actually happened during and now after the pandemic.
Interesting. So I really want to dig in on that a little bit. But as you were talking, it reminded me of a conversation I had. I was doing a session, this was some years ago, and it was for a financial institution. And one of the people came up after the session during the break and said to me, he said, you know, early in your career, when you're kind of an outperformer, it's like jet fuel, kind of like shoots you up into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But then and that's great. He said, but you hit a certain level in the atmosphere and you're flying along and you don't realize that's when you start to encounter friendly fire, which is, folks that maybe are not so happy that you've gone quite so high in the atmosphere. And so hearing you say that level-based comment definitely illustrates and highlights that point. So what surprises me to hear from you today is that this toxicity, bullying, that kind of non-leader behavior to try and hold other people back, it feels like it's coming from our conversation here today, just as common today as it was pre-pandemic. And why I'm surprised by that is because of the virtual element. Because a lot of times when I think about the toxicity, I think about all the passive aggressive stuff that happens when you're in person with another person. The rolling of eyes, showing up late to meetings. I guess all that stuff can still happen virtually, but I always think of the in-person elements.